Hello and welcome to this video on a bizarre outlier in fingerprinting. With that in mind, the very first question for you is what left these behind? We'll give you a moment to figure it out. You might have been tempted to say it is a human fingerprint. Maybe you suspected a trap and said it was an ape. Either way, you are a long way off the truth. Think smaller, furrier, and more STDs. Of course, it is the koala. It had to be a weird Australian animal. Koalas have fingerprints which are almost identical to those of a human. We're talking similar size, shape, and format. So much so are they a perfect match that specialists generally can't distinguish them. The process of patterns, shape, sizes, and so on look exactly the same as they would for a human as they do for the koala. There is then an obvious question about why koalas would have fingerprints. In fact, why do humans have fingerprints? Fortunately, both questions have the same broad answer. Koalas are most active in trees. They climb up into the branches, reach for leaves, specifically eucalypt leaves, and feed on them. They need to have the ability to exercise fine degrees of dexterity, something largely unseen in creatures without opposable digits. They then bring these to their mouth and they eat them. Where we may have developed ours for very similar purposes, the koalas have too. This is convergent evolution. The koala, as with the human, needs to be able to exert both multidirectional force and a degree of control. The fine, almost precise application of force needs to be possible and needs to be distributed over a large area. If you were to try and simply do this with an irregular skin structure, you would find that you get uneven application of pressure, causing damage, or an inability to handle consistently. This is why a reasonably semi-ordered structure works. This structure is actually yet another interesting phenomena. Fingerprints are defined by a series of well-known features. The most common is called the Henry classification system, and it has three basic patterns: a loop, a wall, and an arch. The loops represent 60 to 65% of context of fingerprinting. The wall presents 30 to 35%, and the arch 5%. When you take these three features, mix and match as needed, you get what is a practically unique series between individuals, even identical twins. This takes us back to the first point. Koalas have fingerprints, much like humans. In fact, humans, koalas, and many primates have fingerprints, and they're all unique. Gorillas have them, chimpanzees have them. In fact, it's interesting that just about all the apes do that you would think of, barring perhaps a couple. Orangutans come to mind. Another distinguishing feature is that where you and I have 5 digits on our hands, of which only one of them is opposable, this being your thumb, apes are a little different. Where we have 5 toes and a somewhat opposable big toe, the apes have a entirely opposable big toe. They can grasp and move things with both their hands and feet. Their feet also happen to have fingerprints, or would it be appropriate to call them toe prints? This helps them in gripping and holding onto things. When we look at this in the context of humans, the ability to handle things reliably and accurately and manipulate them is important. Getting food, typing in your keyboard, playing video games, so on. Everything relies on our ability to effectively communicate with the outside world through interacting with it physically, but also understanding what we're seeing and touching. Koalas, given their habitat and dietary requirements, amongst other things, also need to have that same degree of fine control. Without it, they wouldn't be able to feed themselves properly. This has led to something of a joke, at least for Australian police, that they need to be aware of the possibility that koalas could be the ones leaving their fingerprints at various crime scenes. Particularly, as we've mentioned at the very beginning, it's very hard to tell them apart from a human fingerprint, or for that matter, another ape in general. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions that you have below.